Good day, legends. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Endak, and this is my 1982 two-door Range Rover Classic that I just travelled a good chunk of Australia with. I thought I'd just do a bit of a video, give you a bit of a walk around and show you what works really well with the car for the trip, what didn't work too well, and the sort of things I'd probably change for next time. So yeah, let's take a bit of a walk around. So starting at the front, we've got the ARB bull bar. That's been absolutely fantastic. Protected the front from kangaroos and unfortunately a few birds. And also whilst on the track, it's been great just to be able to nudge things as well with it. The only real issue with it is that the thimble, when we're doing Gunshot Creek, hit the ground and push the bar backwards. So there's a bit of a recess that I'll need to bash out and then strengthen up before putting on the new winch, which I've actually got around on the side here. So this is a worn high mount winch, so I'll be stripping it and then rebuilding that. So I'll do a bit of a video on that, but yeah, that should look fantastic on the front. The rumver's been fantastic. I've just always wanted one of those worn high mount winches, and I think it'll look great on the front of this. So unfortunately the rumver will be coming off, and Eamon, my housemate, will be whacking that on his car, so should look epic. The lights, I don't really like the look of them, but they have been absolutely fantastic at night. Really light up the road, and the high beam on them is fantastic. You don't really need a spotlight. I've been using the light bar every now and then, but aside from that, it's been fantastic. So walking around to the side, BF Goodrich KM3s have been awesome. Super quiet tyre on the road and plenty of grip off-roading. They've also got a really strong wall, which I've tested a few times, and yeah, no dramas at all. So I'd highly recommend them. And they've done just over 35,000 kilometers, and they still look bloody brand new. So I'll definitely be getting some. I'll be replacing the spares with them, so I can do a 6-wheel rotation and get a bit of extra mileage on them. Coming underside here, I've actually upgraded the brakes on this. So they're drilled and vented and slotted, discs off a Defender, late model Defender. And then the calipers are also off a Defender. And then the master and brake cylinder are off a Disco, actually. So yeah, it's definitely pulls up a lot better, and I don't get that brake fade that I used to with the old system. So that's definitely one of the best upgrades I've done to this car, and I had no issues with braking on the trip, and it pulls up with all that weight really quickly, which has been great. The other things that I did upgrade before on the trip is the steering arms, the wheel alignment arm, the radius and trailing arms, and and also the turrets up there. So that's all heavy duty, and I'm glad I did that, because a few times up in the Cape we came into a few of the dips a bit too quick, and there was a massive sort of hit, and we pulled over, checked the car, and everything was sweet. But I feel like if we had the old system, could have been a serious accident. So maybe that's something that if you're looking to do a big trip in one of these, I'd highly recommend upgrading them. Coming around to the side, the seal tanks, use them a few times, especially on the remote runs. If I was to do it again, I'd probably still have them. Maybe the only thing I'd do with these is they sit a little bit too low. So forward driving, I did scrape them and hit them a few times and put a few dents. So down the road, what I will do is replace them with some lower profile ones and hug them up a little bit. I had about 170 litre capacity, which is such an overkill because I don't really use a lot of it. So in terms of weight, it made the car really heavy when I filled up to full capacity. But I'd say if you've got 120 would be ideal, and that would carry you through with the remote tracks without really too many issues. And the beauty about these seal tanks is if you're putting Jerry's up on the roof, it just adds so much weight up top, and the car kind of, you can feel it handling on the road. It's really rough. The rock sliders at the moment, as you can see, they don't really do too much because the seal tanks sit lower. So if I was to smack it under a rock, obviously the seal tanks would be the first thing. So what I will be doing is hug them really high, and then the rock sliders, they're starting to get a bit old and rusty inside, so I will rip them out and put some new sliders on, with ideally with a bit more of a step, so you can get up into this thing a little bit more easily. Snorkel is an old school Mantec one. I just upgraded that, I'd say probably 4 or 5 months before I left on the trip, and that has definitely served me well. This thing we had it forging up to about windshield height at some points. So yeah, the 300s absolutely love the water and had no troubles with it. Even with it stuck on the Jardine River, the engine was just rumbling really nicely, submerged in water. So yeah, I can't really fault that at all. The engine's fantastic for that sort of stuff. Coming around to the back, the crash pads have been awesome. Even though the car's quite big and there's a fair bit of storage, particularly when I was by myself, these just provided just that little bit more. And the beauty about them is you can chuck in all your wet stuff and not have to worry about it, you know, being damp inside the car and starting to smell. So that's what I did, and I put a fair bit of my electrics and some of the tools and things like that that I couldn't fit in the drawer down here. So in terms of the tools, I'll do a separate video showing you what I carried and what the sort of things that came in really handy. So at the moment, I've just got the Ingle. I've just pulled it all apart and just testing it and making sure everything works again before closing it up and then storing it in my room as a bit of a bar fridge at the moment. At the back here, the electrics were fantastic. I didn't really have any dramas with them at all. Everything worked really well. The only thing I would probably change is put a bigger battery. I just didn't have sometimes I found myself draining it real quick, particularly if I was stationary somewhere and there wasn't much sunlight for the solar to charge. The rear bar on this has been slightly problematic at times. I'll just quickly put this away and show you the bar. A few times we had to get it braced up on the trip. Let me close this up. You can see, put some plates here, here and here, and same on the other side. The top and bottom of the ARB bull bar is kind of separate, and the only thing that's connecting to it is this face. And the issue with that is, as the tire was bouncing up and down, the whole thing would flex. So by putting these plates, it kind of locked the top and bottom and stiffened the whole thing up, which really helped it. After that, didn't really have any issues whatsoever. The arms that I welded up, surprisingly, are still intact and had no dramas with it, so I was pretty stoked with that. Coming around to the back here, the D-pillar cover on the Nullarbor actually came off. So with these, they're not really secured anyway. They're just kind of like lying there. So after a while, when the wind gets underneath it, it starts lipping up and then it pushes the whole thing out. So luckily I saw it in my side mirror and pulled over and took it off and just kept it in the car so I can sort it out down the road. Only issue is it kind of opened up a big hole for when it rained, and that happens to be right where the electrics is. So I'm pretty surprised that didn't really cause any dramas, but we've made it this far and I'll sort that out when I get to the electrics. Inside, in terms of storage for oil and stuff, I had it all at the back of the seat. There's a bit of a cavity space between the seat and the drawers. So I put the jack, all the oils, and a few bits and bobs like toilet paper and like tape measure on the other side and things like that. The back bench seat is one of those things that after a while I quickly regretted bringing. I initially bought it because I thought Jesse might be jumping in the car with us for a good way up to the Cape, but then Chris came, so Jess jumped in with Chris. But good thing is we did have the back seat for Jess when we were doing the old telly track, so it did come in handy then, and also up through the centre where I gave a few people a lift with breakdowns. But down the road I will be taking that out and putting some water tanks inside so I don't have to have it up on the roof, and I will also be dragging the fridge around to the side so I can access it through the side windows. And there will be probably, my electrics will be all located here in the center, sitting up a little bit higher as well, so it's away from water, so I can also take these boxes out and get further storage. Coming inside the car into the front, the biggest drama I had with this thing is the electrics. It's cables galore through it. So I will be taking the whole dashboard out and rewiring this and going to try to keep it as simple as possible. I'll be putting a new fuse box as well, because these old things came with 3 fuses that would power everything in the car. Like, you wouldn't believe it, and they were all roughly about 35 amps. So if one thing blew, you would pretty much lose a lot of other things. Like, I know that if the rear brake lights blew, then that would throw out my window wipers and I think the indicator and the hazards. So it was just really annoying. Every now and then it would blow, and then I'd have all these dramas. And the biggest thing is I couldn't start the car. So what I did is I put this little contraption that is wired up to the solenoid of the starter motor, and that kind of just bypasses the ignition and allows me to kick it over when it gets a bit stuck sometimes. So that was good. I was able to kind of make something on the road, which is good, rather than get stuck. And yeah, I also put a low coolant reader, so that in case that I was losing coolant, I'd be able to know before I blew a head gasket or did anything, drastic. So that was a great safety net. I also chucked in an engine watchdog. So if you've got, I would put it in any car I have, really, to be honest. It gives you the exact temperature at that point. And so I put it on the coolant, the thermostat housing, and that gave me a perfect reading as to what the coolant was, because I would never trust the actual reader that's in the car. It doesn't even freaking, you see it budge a little bit, but by the time it tells you that it's hot, you've already done some serious damage. In the center console, I put the C-Tech unit up here. So this is my dual battery system alongside with all this other heap of crap. And that's been a really good spot for it, because it's, out of water when you get water inside here. And it's also, closed up and no dust and things like that can get in. The beauty about putting it there as opposed to, elsewhere as well on this is that I was able to still run my battery temperature reader. So you don't want too much charge going into a battery that's way too hot. So that regulates how much charge to put into the battery when it's at a certain temperature. Some people I know hide it and put it somewhere else and don't pick up that temperature, but you could be doing some serious damage to your battery if you don't have it located at the right area. Also at the back here, I made another second compartment which houses my air compressor underneath this box, and then all I do is pretty much just pull out the hose, and then I put it out through the window there or the back here, and then pump up each 2 tires at a time on the side. And then and the switch for that is just up here with all the lockers. So that's been that worked really well. It was just easy and convenient, and the fact that you don't have to pop the hood to plug in your compressor and do all that every time you're pumping and doing that, it was just great. I've also got the solar panel cable, so I've got that connected up here to an Anderson that runs to the back of the C-Tech unit here. And so all I do is just pull this cable out the window, and then I put the panel on the windshield at the front here, and then it charges that up. The sound system in the car was another thing that luckily it was actually in the car when I got it, and so that was awesome to have some music. But then when we were doing the old Frenchman's track and the Jardine crossing, we submerged the amplifiers that are underneath both seats, and that just absolutely ruined it. So that is something I'm going to have to replace. Coming out of the car without stepping on the winch there, the roof rack had a few dramas with it. I had the wrong clips on it at the start of this trip, and as a result, when we were in on Fraser, this whole roof rack actually jumped off the rail and then scraped across the whole roof. So that was a huge issue we had. So we had to put it back on, and then I had to put some more pop rivets in the legs that I've kind of customized for this, because the roof rack's 1.2 but the roof's 1.5. So I put some uni struts, and I added another one as well just to distribute more load across the whole gutter. once I put the right connections on the legs, it works great and didn't have any dramas for the rest of the trip. The rooftop tent is a big question mark whether I'd have this one again. Look, if you were setting up for a few days, it was fantastic to have a really nice setup. However, packing it and then setting it up every day was a big drama, and it just took a heap of time. And with the boxes in front and also the jerry cans, made it really hard to zip the whole rooftop tent up and unzip it. And as you can see, I've broken the zip, so that's why it's still undone there. So down the road, I will probably go back to a swag setup, or I'm thinking of doing an internal roll cage or an external roll cage on the car. So then I can put a hard shell rooftop tent that's anchored and supported by the chassis rather than the roof. So I know those things weigh like 100 kilos pretty much, or 90 kilos is what the Bush Company one weighs. And yeah, so there's a fair bit of weight, and putting it on the gutters on this thing, you're just asking for some big trouble. So that's pretty much a bit of a wrap for the car. If you guys have any questions in regards to the trip or the car in general, just chuck it down in the comments. I will definitely get back to you on it. But aside from that, the car really served me well. And whilst I had a few breakdowns here and there, look, it's all part of the fun, and I guess part of being on the road, and a bit of a challenge here and there never hurts anybody. So yeah, it was fantastic. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, and I'll be chucking in some more videos about what sort of tools and equipment I bought on the car in the car that was able to help me get out of trouble and things like that. So tune in. All right, guys. Cheers.